this is Elle from My Life as a Frugal Wife. I have just harvested an entire small laundry basket full of pineapple sage. And there are many, many good medicinal uses for pineapple sage. We do use it in cooking. We dry a lot of our own herbs for our own use, as well as I drink a lot of herbal tea. And just a little disclaimer, I am not a healthcare professional, so what I read on the internet is just kind of what I know. I do read a lot of medicinal herbal books, as well as take herbal classes. So please do your own research, use at your own risk, and use your own judgment. Please do not take anything I say as expert advice. But I do know that sage has a lot of antibacterial and antifungal properties. It is also fantastic to help with anxiety and depression, high blood pressure, and cleansing and purification of the home when burned. And it also smells really, really good and tastes really, really good when you use it in cooking. So I am going to dry some sage bunches as well as dry some sage for some herbal tea. And I'm also going to make some herbal tea. So stay tuned and I'll show you how I do it. So now I'm going to show you how I make my herbal bunches for drying. We do grow and dry a lot of our own herbs for teas and for cooking and for just drying bunches. I have quite a few herbal bunches around our house and I just think that they're beautiful. I do want to get into burning sage and wildflower bunches, as I said a little earlier. So I am going to start off with making pineapple sage bunches. These will basically hang underneath my bar area near my kitchen sink. And what I do is basically I take my sage leaves and I cut off or pull off any that, are yellowed or not really a good leaf to dry. I wouldn't use it for tea and I wouldn't dry it for cooking. I basically just put these right back in my compost. And I take the best leaves, from each stem. Now, one thing I wanted to point out, which I did notice on my sage bush, literally it is like a bush. It does grow up to 4 feet tall, at least a couple feet wide. So it grows very, very quickly. And one thing I noticed on some of my lower leaves, especially those leaves that have touched the ground, is that they rooted. I don't know if you can see that, but they have rooted. There are little roots on the bottom from where it was touching the soil and it grew roots. So this I am going to actually put in a cup of water and try and reroot another plant that I will try and grow over the fall, either in my greenhouse or I'll grow indoors as much as I can so that I can further make my tea and use it for cooking as well. So I'm just gonna gather some bunches here. Here's another one where it rooted. I don't know if you can see that on the camera. So I'm gonna keep this one as well. And I do have these little buggies that are coming off my sage. That's okay. And anything that has, you have to look under each leaf, just make sure that there's no caterpillar eggs, that it is a good leaf, because you don't want that in your food or in your tea for that matter. But it's nature, so it's kind of the nature of the beast. And see, we have some bugs that decided that they were going to have dinner. So I would just throw those in my compost. I'm not even gonna bother drying them. And look underneath each leaf. And some of these really got tall. I did have some pretty lengthy branches. But this was actually my first year planting sage. I was quite surprised at how fast it grew and how big it grew. Sage is a perennial. It will die at the first frost, and it hopefully will come back in the spring. So I'm just going to gather them all up as best I can and create a bunch. Anything that falls off that is a viable leaf, I'm just going to save, and I will make my tea. Like I said, you just want to pick off the ones that the caterpillars kind of ate or the bugs ate. Believe me, when you grow a sage plant, you will have more than enough. It will not faze you to be a little choosy when you're picking your leaves. And I do have a bag of elastics that I save off of produce and other items that I get from the grocery store that do have elastics on them. Asparagus is great for that. They have really thick elastics. And I would just grab the bunch at the very base and I will tie an elastic. And I do it loosely. Again, you're gonna take anything that fell off, and this is your bunch. Now I use thumbtacks. I do not nail anything in my walls. I use clear thumbtacks or push pins, if you will, and I will put them underneath my bar, and I will take the hook of the elastic, hook them on so that they will dry, and then I will take them outside over a trash bag, and I will basically run my hands down the whole plant and take off all of the dried leaves, and then use a funnel and put them into my mason jars. And that is the quickest way I have found to dry your herbs. I do not use a dehydrator. I do not believe in heating up the herb, especially if you're using it for cooking or for medicinal tea. I let it air dry on its own. Quite frankly, natural is best for me, and it's less work. You know, you really have to put each leaf on a dehydrating tray. I have also seen people who will just put the whole stem on the dehydrating tray, and it takes numerous trays when all I have to do is gather up, you know, 4 or 5 bunches, put them underneath a shelf or underneath the bar of my kitchen. And it's kind of out of the way. It's not in anyone's way. And, you know, I just keep checking every couple days. And usually in my house, because we don't usually have the AC cranked up real high, my house stays about 76 degrees on average. Even in the Texas summer heat, I do not raise the temperature of our AC. So it is relatively comfortable in our home. So these do take about a week, week and a half, maybe even 2 weeks to dry out completely before I will be able to put them into a mason jar for my dried herbs. Next, we are going to make herbal tea. I am putting on the water for my tea right now, so it'll just be a couple minutes. I use a tea diffuser. This has a glass carafe, if you will, or teapot, and it has an insert that has little holes in it. I use this for all of my medicinal tea blends. I primarily drink herbal tea. I will not buy a lot of your flavored teas in the market. I just think they're gross. But I do use herbal tea and practice herbal medicine in our home. So I have been starting to use sage, and I'm going to make a sage tea for me tonight. So what I am going to do is just take some of those leaves that fell off while we were harvesting and making our bunches, and I'm just gonna throw them in. And I'm gonna throw them in, stems and all. Just make sure that there are no bugs on the underside. I try not to waste anything that I grow. It not only takes time and effort and money, but it's just wasteful. So it either goes in my compost, in my tea, or in our food. So I am just going to probably use about a half a dozen leaves to a dozen leaves, depending on your taste. I am gonna add honey to this. I do use raw, unfiltered honey grown locally in our area. So I get all of those good allergens as well and all the beneficial properties. Now with medicinal tea, you wanna make sure that this steeps at least 15 to 20 minutes. Anything less than that, you're just getting flavor. But I want all of the natural beneficial properties of this plant, including its anti-inflammatory and antifungal properties, and it is very calming. I love herbal tea at night. So when my water boils, I will be right back. And you're just gonna pour, ooh, this is hot. You're just gonna pour boiling water over your tea leaves, whether it be in a cup, just a regular coffee mug that you can put leaves in, or a tea carafe like this. Now, as I said, this is going to start turning yellow, like a yellowish green color as it steeps. And I'm gonna let this steep for about 20 to 25 minutes so that every nutritional part of this herb is extracted. And the one thing I will do is I'm gonna add peppermint leaf. The reason why I do that is because peppermint makes the body alkaline. It is something that I always put in my tea. And you know, as they say, in an alkaline environment, things can't grow. So here's hoping. The peppermint leaf that I use is dried. I buy a lot of my herbals dried, and I'm gonna add medicinal tea or herbal tea is not an exact science, folks. I personally dump and steep. It's that easy. I am gonna get a spoon, make sure that all of that is underneath the water. So I have pineapple sage. It's gonna have a slight lemony, slight citrusy flavor profile to it. And it also has a little bit of peppermint leaf. And I'm going to let this steep for 20 to 25 minutes and drink my tea with a little bit of raw, unfiltered honey. Now, I did set aside some leaves for some loose tea throughout the week. I also have some that I will use for cooking. I plan on making sage chicken in the next couple of days in the crock pot. This will be perfect to put underneath the skin with some butter. And I'm also propagating a new plant out of some root cutting that I found on my plant where it had touched the soil. So I will get a new sage plant. Hopefully it will last me through the winter in our greenhouse. And thank you for watching. I hope you learned something. This is typically how I do my teas and my herbs. Hopefully I've inspired you to grow your own and make your own tea. Bye for now.